Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Build with AI Flutter with Gemini. My name is Roman Jaquez. I am a Flutter GDE. I am a lead organizer at GDG Lawrence. I'm also a Google certified cloud architect. And today we're going to be providing you with an amazing jam-packed session, a hands-on workshop, code lab, code along, whatever you want to call it, on building Flutter apps powered by Gemini. This is the first session of two sessions. They're not dependent on each other, but at least we just wanted to bring, again, a lot of great content, great quality content to our community so that you can learn how to build Flutter web applications, Flutter applications powered by Gemini. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I already see a lot of people in the chat dropping in the chat where you're joining from. So thank you so much, everybody, for your support. Let's proceed. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for joining right now today. I know there's a lot of people all over the world, but especially all the co-hosting communities across the US and Canada, and everyone joining worldwide. I see a bunch of folks from all the GDGs supporting us. Thank you so much. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. So again, thank you for bringing along your community so that we can all learn together, as a community with all of these great content, from Flutter Technology. So thank you so much. First of all, let's get a couple of things out of the way. The code of conduct. We just want to make sure that we ensure that we have zero tolerance policy for harassment. Make sure to be kind with one another. We're here to learn from each other, and we're here to share knowledge and whatnot. So if you have any questions around that, you can scan the QR code on the screen. But please be excellent to each other. Let's all share. Please drop your questions in the Q&A section, and we will address them as we see fit. But for now, let's all enjoy. Let's have a nice time, and let's learn about Flutter and Gemini. So today's session, remember, this is a two-part session, but in today's session, we're going to be building a Flutter web application. In this case, it's going to be a temperature converter powered by Gemini. We will also hook you up with a Gemini API key via Google AI Studio. We're going to show you how to do that. Also, we're going to be using Project IDX for the first time at GDG Lawrence. We're going to be showcasing this amazing tool. But if you're set up on building, Flutter applications on your local machine, you can use your local machine. Please go ahead and do it. If not, we're going to set you up with Project IDX, which is a web-based, cloud-based IDE that allows you to build amazing experiences without you having to install anything on your local environment. You kind of have like a sandbox in the Google Cloud where you could build amazing applications. So we're going to be introducing you to that. So if you see there, that's just a small screenshot animation of what we're going to be building today. Okay. And of course, I'm not, I'm just going to mention it. I'm, preaching to the choir. Remember what Flutter is. Flutter is this amazing UI toolkit supported by Google that allows you to build beautiful, natively compiled experiences in a multi-platform fashion. Remember, right now, Flutter allows you to, with one single code base, to publish to 7 platforms. Right now, there are the 7 platforms officially supported, which are Windows, iOS, Mac OS, Web, Android, Linux, and embedded. But also we have RISC-V. We also have a WebAssembly. But remember, we have 7 official platforms supported by Flutter with one single code base. So what better way to develop amazing experiences and reach our users to all the devices possible by using a framework such as Flutter. So please drop any questions in the chat if you or in the Q&A section if you have any. Also, Gemini, how AI and large language models has taken the industry by storm, and it has had so much momentum. So Gemini is a family of large language models created by Google, which kind of gives you direct access to the Google AI infrastructure. So it's an amazing way for you to create amazing experiences powered by artificial intelligence, machine learning, and you can tap into all that. You can harness all the power of AI provided by Google via Gemini. Gemini gives you access to large language models. We're not going to go deep into like, creating models or training models or anything, because it is so easy to tap into Gemini, even if you don't know anything about AI. I myself, I didn't know anything about AI probably like about a year ago. I've been a software engineer for 13 plus years, and this is the time where I've actually embraced AI a lot, and it has allowed me to develop applications without having any prior experience like in AI. Just because, for example, like the way that I use Gemini and I use it in my applications, in my Flutter applications, is by tapping into Gemini by using the Google AI SDK for Dart, which we're going to show it to you in a minute. That's how you use to build Gemini-powered Flutter applications. And of course, in order for you to tap into all these capabilities, you have to get a Gemini API key through Google AI Studio, which we also provide you as well. Some people are asking, like, is this expensive to actually tap into Gemini? Is this gonna, make a dent in my wallet? Well, here there's a link so you can show, so we can show you the pricing, but there's actually a free tier that you can leverage with some caps, of course, but you should be able to, as a developer, tap into all these amazing capabilities from Google AI just at your fingertips by just tapping into the available APIs. So we're going to be also discussing that a little bit more. So you're going to be exposed also to prompt design. And there are the multiple types of prompt design. Prompt design is the way that you interact with large language models by providing a prompt, and then you do this trial and error until you refine your prompt, and then you get the desired response from your large language models. There are three types of prompt design. There are three types of prompts that you can kind of execute against your large language models. You have free form, kind of like open-ended text, no specific fields, very open. Structure is the one that we're going to be doing today, which you actually ask it to give it to you. You give it an example. You ask for like a specific response in one particular format. That way you can consume it in your application. And of course, last but not least, you have chat. I've seen a lot of applications using chat. Actually, there are really a ton of those out there. If I see another chat application, I'm like, I'm going to go sick. But no, we're going to be using the structure type of prompts. That way we can consume it in our applications and truly add amazing capabilities and features to our applications powered by Gemini and the whole paradigm of AI. This is what we'll be building, just as a small, brief kind of like schematics of what we're going to be building. So we're going to be creating a Flutter web application. We're going to provide a prompt. We're going to ask it, can you convert this temperature, for example, from Celsius to Fahrenheit? I just give you the value and you just give me the response as a JSON. So this is what we're going to be learning today, how you can prompt, how you can send a command to Gemini, and then it replies to you with your desired outcome in the matching the proper schema in a format that I'm going to be able to consume in my application. You're going to see how simple it is. And this is something that I definitely want to see a lot more people doing, because people still are interacting like with just open text or just like chat interactions with your applications. You want to make robust applications powered by Gemini. This is the way to go. So we're going to be sharing in the chat. We're going to be dropping a couple of links. So for example, right now we're going to be dropping today's code lab. So remember, I created a code lab specific for this session. This is a code lab that you're going to be able to follow along. I'm going to be coding, and you can even follow along with this code lab. There are some snippets of code that you can copy and paste. We're going to be going over some of the code that we created for you. We're going to build this application from scratch. We're going to just build it from a blank slate, and we're going to build this application. So this is the code lab. Either you scan the QR code on the screen or you copy the URL provided, tinyurl.com/AI-codelab1, AI-codelab-1. You can use this URL, and then you can visit. I think our team actually just dropped that link in the chat, and you can use that because this is the code lab that we were going to be using to do the code along or the hands-on workshop. You can use this code lab, to do your own events, to share it with your friends, to follow along, let's say at your own pace if you want to. But this is great because you have kind of like experts in house that can answer your questions. But this is great if you want to follow it at your own pace as well. So I hope you guys either took a screenshot, copy this link, scan the QR code, or grab the link that the team provided in the chat. Okay, so let's continue. And of course, as a token of our appreciation, at the end of the session, we're going to have a raffle. So for those of you who want to join the raffle of some Google merch swag, please scan the QR code provided in there or copy the URL provided below, AI-raffle-1 on the tinyurl.com. These are, again, as a token of our appreciation. We're also going to even have like a pop quiz. So make sure you cannot just copy it and then submit it and then you go off and then come back. No, you have to be present. You have to be connected in order to qualify for the raffle. So don't just be grabbing this QR code, send it to your grandma so that she can get the swag. No, you have to be present. Your name will be called out. You need to be on the chat, and then we're going to collect some information from you and send you some swag. This is just, again, as a token of our appreciation for you joining us in this session. So we're going to be raffling a couple of these bottles, like some of the swag from the Google store. Okay, so I'm going to give you one more minute so that you can either scan the QR code or copy the URL. The team is going to drop it in the chat. This is for the raffle. So please sign up, put your email, put your name. We're going to then do like the wheel of names at the end of the session, and then we're going to be doing the raffle. So I hope everybody's perfect. Thank you, Linda, for providing the link. So perfect. Awesome. And let's start. I know I did a lot of talking and you guys are really anxious and really excited to start coding. Let's do it. So now we're all set. Let's continue now. We're going to build this application from scratch. So please pay attention. I'm going to get out of this session right here, and I'm going to start with the code lab. So remember, the code lab is right here. This is what the code lab looks like. If you can see right there, I'm going to reshare my screen one more time just to make sure that, let me do that. And then I'm going to share my whole window. That way you guys can see the entire screen. So let me see right there. Perfect. So can you guys see it? Hope you guys can see it right now. So this is the code lab that we're going to be following today. Please, let's all be on step number 1. So the overview of this code lab is we're going to be building this Flutter web application. Either if you are set up with Flutter locally on your machine or your Mac or Windows, wherever you have it set up on your Linux environment, if you have Flutter set up, please go ahead. You can continue moving forward. For those of us who, let's say, I don't want to install anything, I just want to learn Flutter and start right away, we're going to be using Project IDX, which I'm going to explain in a minute. So again, this is not a super beginner code lab there, but again, if you don't know anything about Flutter, that's okay. I got you. But this is, for example, at least you need to know what Flutter is. Like if you just stumble upon this session, I say welcome, but at least you need to know what Flutter is in order to complete this code lab. So we're going to be building layouts in Flutter. We're going to be learning about state management using Riverpod. And then we're going to be tapping into the Gemini integration, how to supercharge your applications using the power of AI. So if you see here, I'm showing you how the application will look at the end. Some of the prerequisites, of course, is if you want to install the Flutter SDK, that's on you. You can use Visual Studio Code if you want to, but we're going to be using Project IDX where you won't need to install anything at all. We will install some of the dependencies. We will see that later. And of course, we need to get a Gemini API key, and that's also going to be part of Google AI Studio, but we're going to get to that point in just a minute. I just wanted to check out if anybody has any questions. Alfredo says, is this related to the Google Challenge in August? No, not related to the Google Challenge in August, but this is something that you can even get inspiration from if you want to do the Google Gemini Challenge for August. Let's say this gives you an inspiration to also use Gemini to build applications. This would definitely qualify if you want to do something like this. Thank you for your questions. Please keep bringing those questions over, dropping your questions in the QA session, and we're going to continue. Praful, can you hear me? Can anybody else hear what I'm saying? I see folks having some audio issues. Can anybody just give me a thumbs up? Make sure that you guys are okay. Perfect. So Praful, you might want to
hear you.
Perfect. So Praful, you might want to check your audio. So we're going to be proceeding. If not, please take a look at the links that we just dropped in the chat, and you can follow along at your own pace. With step number 2, install Flutter. In our case, again, like I mentioned, we're not going to install Flutter, but if you have Flutter already, or if you want to install, you can follow this step at your own pace, and you can install it on your environment, whether, let's say, whether you're on a Windows, on a Mac, if you're on a Linux, whatever, you could do so. And then you can create the Flutter project. For those of us, we're going to be doing Project IDX. I'm going to hook you up in just a minute. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing. The first step, step 2 and step 3 are going to walk you through on how you install Flutter, how you create the first project, and then how you install the dependencies. For those of us who are not going to install anything, we're going to be doing Project IDX. Let's skip right over to step number 4. So in step number 4 is where we said we're going to be using Project IDX. Project IDX is this amazing tool, also provided by Google, hosted in the Google Cloud, that gives you kind of like a sandbox for you to build amazing applications powered by Gemini. In this case, you can actually build web applications, but you can build also Flutter applications. It also has emulators and all of that. You're going to see that in just a second. So I'm going to stay here in step number 4, and I'm going to invite everybody to open up another tab on your browser. Let's say, if you're doing Chrome, let's go to Project IDX, and you type idx.dev. The URL is idx.dev. That is Project IDX, hosted in the Google Cloud. And this is the IDE that then allows you to create your project. You create your workspace, and then you create your project. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. So for those of you who are going to be using Project IDX, I definitely recommend that. That way you don't spend that much time installing Flutter, because it may take a little bit. It can eat up some of this workshop. So let's do Project IDX. So I hope that everybody went to idx.dev. idx.dev. Like I mentioned, IDX is this amazing, this amazing tool that allows you to build applications hosted in the Google Cloud. So let me show you how you get started. So if I zoom in, so you can see at the top right corner, there's a big purple button that turns white when you hover over. It says Get Started. I'm going to click right there where it says Get Started. But instead, I'm going to use my another account because I already have it set up. So I'm going to come in as a brand new user into Project IDX. If this is your first time visiting Project IDX, don't fret. It walks you through how to create your environment, how to create your workspace, and how to create a project. So you make sure that you accept the Google terms and services. They welcome you to Project IDX. You click where it says Get Started. Make sure that you join with a Gmail account. And I'm going to click on Continue. So I click on Continue. Say not right now, because we're not going to do hook it up with Gemini precisely. We're going to be tapping into Gemini, but not enabling Gemini in IDX. You could do that later. I'm going to just say not right now so we can proceed much quicker. And right off the gate, you're introduced to this landing page where it says start building your app in the cloud. So again, Project IDX is this web-based development environment from Google, hosted. It's kind of like it's actually backed by Google Cloud Workstation. So it's such an amazing way. Think about it like a virtual machine that gets spun up for you with all the dependencies already installed so that you can immediately hit the ground running. So now here you can see on the right hand side, you have like Angular, Astro, Go, Python, but you also have like Node and Flutter. So for those of you who are going to be doing Flutter, in the landing page, you select the Flutter option. Kevin, you cannot see the lower portion. Can you see at least the what you can see right now, like the landing page where you see this? Because at least we're more concerned about this part right here where you can see the options. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to select Flutter. I'm going to click on Flutter. Perfect. And then now you're going to create a workspace. So that workspace, I believe you have like 5 workspaces for free under if you have a Google developer, I think you have a Google developer program account, it gives you like 5 free workspaces. So we're going to start with a basic workspace. Let's just call it Gemini, temp Flutter, for example. You could call it anything. In this case, I want to name my workspace based on the project that I'm going to be building. So in my workspace, remember I selected the Flutter template because it's going to be now creating some of those dependencies. And now I'm going to name my workspace Gemini temp Flutter, and I'm just going to click create. While this creates, remember what this is actually pretty much doing. It's exactly what I mentioned. It's kind of like spinning up a virtual machine behind the scenes. It's creating like installing all of the dependencies, creating that little sandbox for you so that you can immediately start building Flutter applications. You don't have to install, download the Flutter SDK. Everything is set up for you. You immediately start coding right away. Okay, let's see if there are any questions. No questions so far. I think we should be good. Let's continue. Awesome. So right there you go. You're all set up. Your project is ready to go. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on my project right here. That way we can see it. But you see right there already the project is ready to start. So it's starting the daemon. It's starting now. It's gonna hook you up with, again, a couple of emulators. You're gonna get like an Android emulator. You're gonna get a web emulator. You can also even tap into the iOS emulator on the cloud. It's amazing. This is something that you get completely for free. So I definitely encourage everybody to create your project in IDX. Use Project IDX not only for Flutter but for other projects. You can have Python. You have for example, like you can tap into Gemini. You could do like Node.js. You could do Python. You could do a Go. You could do other types of projects, not just Flutter. I remember there was this other IDE called dartpad.dev, which was amazing. I liked it a lot. This one is kind of like superseding it now. So it's pretty cool. So this is Project IDX. I'm going to close the terminal. And if you see right here on the right-hand side, now the project is materializing. So the basic, like the kind of like the template, or the boilerplate project that you always get when you start a new project in Flutter is going to materialize in just a minute. So it is cool. I didn't have to install anything. I created my Project IDX and boom, we have our Flutter project. It kind of counter very common template that you get when you create a brand new Flutter project. We just got it right now. And I was just talking. I didn't do anything. Project IDX did everything for me. So I like that. So Angelina, if you had an issue with that, yeah, it may be because yes, when you do the free stuff, a lot of people are joining. Maybe you might get a little bit of a delay because it's spinning up for you, or it may be the first time, so yours is instantiated. But don't fret. This is common. So just wait a little bit and then see when it comes up. Meanwhile, I just wanted to at least make sure that some of you are already, already have the Project IDX. Gaudis, are you saying can we upgrade the Flutter version in the Project IDX? It is always up to date. You don't have to install it. What actually gets not up to date is actually the packages. So the packages that you install in the dependencies, you have to update those yourself. But Flutter itself gets always updated in Project IDX. So you're always like on the very latest. So make sure that for example, also you can take a look at the, here like the pubspec.yaml that you're always in the latest version. But every time you create a brand new Flutter project in Project IDX, you're on the very latest. The pubspec.yaml is then when you determine, for example, if you are updated, but all the plumbing underneath it should be taken care of for you by Project IDX. Awesome. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, but we're going to come back to this. I just wanted to make sure that at least everybody was set up with Project IDX. Now that you are, or for example, if it's still spinning for you, that's okay. But at least make sure that you have it open and that the project is there. That way we can proceed to the next you can proceed to the next step. For those of you who want to ask questions, make sure to drop them in the QA, because otherwise your questions may get lost in the chat. Okay, perfect. So yes. So for example, like Shava just answered a question. Thank you, Shava, and for answering questions, bringing your community, and for always being a great supporter of our events. So let's continue now on the next step. So the next step is actually, now that you have your Project IDX set up, we're going to get to that in a minute. Now we're going to get an API key from Gemini. How do you get a Gemini API key? Do you have to pay? Do you have to, do they give you, you have to call Google? No, not any of that. You use AI, or what they call the AI Studio for Google AI Studio, in order to get a Gemini API key. Remember, like I mentioned, Gemini is just this family of multimodal large language models. This is developed by Google, by DeepMind, Google DeepMind. And in order to tap into Gemini's capabilities in the Google Cloud, you need an API key. That way they can track your usage. For example, like if you exceed the free quota, then they can charge you. But for now, we're going to set you up with one API key. And let me show you how to do that. So in one tab, you're going to have Project IDX. Now let's open up another tab so that we can so that we can get you with an API key for Gemini. So the way that you do it is you go to aistudio.google.com. So I think the team is going to drop it in the chat. Yes, Samina. Hi, Samina. How are you? How's everybody? How are you? Thank you so much for joining. Yes, we're going to be talking about like the dependencies that you're going to be installing, but if you want to go ahead, please go ahead. We're going to be covering those points once we start with the code. For now, let's get a Gemini API key. So you're going to go to AI Studio. Thank you, Linda. AI Studio at google.com. I'm going to go in. I'm going to go in like as a brand new user. So let me switch, and I'm going to go to as a GDG Lawrence user. So if you go to Google AI Studio, you're presented with this IDE, kind of like a web-based, like a chat interface that you can interact with Google AI Studio. The way that you get an API key is just like you see on the left-hand side of AI Studio right here, where it says Get API Key. So you click on that button right there, click right there. And for example, I already have an API key associated with a project, but let's say I don't have one, but you see what it says, free of charge. This is because I haven't set up billing. I am still under the free tier. I haven't exceeded the maximum number of requests that I can do in one day. But what's going to happen is, like, when you ask for an API key, a Google Cloud project is going to be created for you. That way later on you can set up billing. So let's do that. So I'm going to create an API key. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete this API key, and then I'm going to be kind of like if I'm not there. So if I want to, for example, let's say I want to create an API key, this is how you do it. You click Create API Key. Of course, they encourage that you don't have your API keys available, let's say, in public repositories, aka GitHub or any other public place. I'm going to give you some tips on how you can mask or how you can obfuscate your code and protect your API keys. The recommended way, of course, is using it in the cloud, probably behind some firewall, maybe under a cloud function or something like that, using maybe server secrets. You could do a lot of options. In Flutter, you use Dart define, and then you can actually incorporate it as you build your application. But those are some of the things that we're going to be discussing later. Let me show you how to get the API key first. So you click Got It. It's going to be creating your API key, and it's going to be either select a project from your Google Cloud. Let's say in my case, I already have a Google Cloud account under GDG Lawrence, but you could create a brand new project, for example, like, on that. So you can either, for example, in my case, I'm going to just be using one existing project. You can either create an existing project, or they create one for you. So you can just like search for a cloud project. In my case, I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to click where it says Create API Key in Existing Project. So I'm going to be clicking here, Create API Key. So it says generating API key, and then you're going to get kind of like some sort of hash, like a characters that represent the API key. Okay, so this is a secret key, so make sure to keep it for yourself. I'm going to probably just use it for this instance, and then I'm going to delete it because every API key should be secure. James asks, I have an API key. Should I create a new one? No, you don't have to. If you already have an API key, keep using your API key, no problem. So you can just continue using your API key. So I'm going to copy this API key, and I'm just going to put it on the side. So after, for example, if you copy this one and you close it, don't worry, you haven't lost it. You can copy your API key just by coming back over here. You click copy, and then you copy your API key. So make sure that you create your API key by going to aistudio.google.com. You create your API key, you put it on the side because we're going to be using it in just a minute. So I'm going to either I could keep this window open, for example, like if I want to grab my API key, but I just wanted to refer back again to the code lab in step number 5, where we explain how to get the API key. So we go to Google AI Studio. You set up the developer in your environment. You get your API key. You click on the API key. You name your project. You copy your API key, and then you should be all set. So can somebody just give me, a thumbs up just in case whether, you're good to go with the API key? You have your project IDX already set up. I would like to see a couple of thumbs up in the chat, just making sure that people are fully set up. Thank you so much. Everybody's fully set up. You have your Google API key. You have your Gemini API key. You have project IDX set up. Let's start building this application, shall we? Let's go at it. So now that you skip step number 5, let's go immediately to step number 6, where we're going to be building this application. Again, you can go ahead on your own. You can follow, do like, self-paced if you want to. I'm going to be following along exactly what we're building, what we do in this code lab. That way you see every single piece of it, okay? But if you feel confident, if you feel confident and you feel adventurous, please go ahead on your own and continue building all the way to the end if you want to. So let's continue on that. Awesome. So Bob, you said that you hit a Google Workspace permission issue that requires access to early access apps now enabled. Interesting. But are you able to at least is this again on the project IDX that you got that issue? If I would encourage you, either try to use maybe a new account, like try to create it with a separate Gmail account. Sometimes these conflicts may appear. Try to create it maybe with a separate Google account. Maybe I even created a brand new one the other day where I was creating a workshop and it was all good. So you can try something like that, maybe creating it under another account. Awesome. So let's continue. So I'm going to now go to step number 6. So if you are in the code lab, we're going to go to step number 6. So in step number 6, we are explaining the schematics of this application. So this is pretty much how I always go about building my Flutter application. So when I build a Flutter application, I try to achieve widget composition. What does that mean? This means every single feature of the application is a separate widget. Remember this mantra: everything in Flutter is a widget. Exactly the same way that you see it in this schematics is exactly how I'm going to develop it. Every discrete aspect of the application is a separate widget, and then widgets come together and build a widget tree. And then that's how you build your application, as opposed to be everything on one single class or everything within a single build method. Now we're going to be creating discrete little components that then come together and communicate among each other to then build this whole application. So let's start right away. And I'm going to prove to you that we're going to start right from scratch. We're not going to be, we're going to start from scratch. Let me show you how. I'm going to be moving my code lab on the side. And of course, you're going to follow along because that's exactly what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to my, here in Project IDX, you can go to the lib folder main.dart. I'm going to double click on it. And then you see here let me actually dock this on the side. Let me split it to the right. Here we go. So actually, let me just switch it. So here, maybe let me close this one. And here we go. So let's say the main.dart, kind of like it on this side. Here we go. And here we go. And then the web, we're going to move it here. So you see, I have an Android emulator, which is actually running on the cloud. And then I have the web emulator, which is right there. So what we're going to be doing, exactly what I'm going to be doing, I'm on step number 6. I'm going to delete everything, completely everything. So clean your main.dart, because here there's no gimmicks. This is not a test. No, this is actually for real. We're building this application from scratch. So you clear everything that is in the main.dart file, just clean it completely. And then we're going to start by actually bringing the dependency. So in step number 6, I explain all the dependencies that we're going to be bringing into our application, which are, we're going to be bringing Dart convert. These are some of the libraries from Dart, some of the packages. that allow you to convert, let's say, from strings to JSON, mapping objects and whatnot. We're going to be using the material styling of, the material package. We're also going to be using some services. We're also going to be using RiverPod as part of our dependencies. We're going to be bringing Google Generative AI as a package. So this is back to Samina's question. How do you add all of these dependencies? The way that you add these dependencies is by actually bringing, so remember that was the question. So the dependencies that we're going to be bringing is the dependencies that we show on step number 3, which are these. So you're going to open the command line. You can open the command line in your terminal. And for example, let me just bring it again. And the way that you install the dependencies is by doing this. So you're going to do Flutter pub add. We're going to be adding RiverPod. We're going to be adding Google Generative AI. Those are the 2 main dependencies that we're going to be having in this application. All the other dependencies should already be fulfilled, but at least at a minimum, you're going to need these 2 dependencies before you can add those lines above, because you see like some of those lines are in red, of course. And we're going to be adding packages this way: Flutter pub add, Flutter RiverPod, and Google Generative AI. So I'm going to hit enter. And what this is going to do is it's going to install those dependencies. And then now you see that how those lines from red, they turn to yellow because we haven't used them yet. So at least make sure that you add that dependency. That is one step that I'm going to add right there in Project.
Roman,
yes,
there is a question in the chat. Can you show them how to get the terminal open?
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Great question. How do you get the command line in Project IDX? You do the command control tilde, like CTRL control, and then the tilde, which is like the little squiggly line. You like the little like tilde is like the first key before the number 1. So you do control tilde. You can toggle it on or off like this. You could do control tilde, and then you can just bring it up, and then it comes on for you. So this is how you bring the terminal in Project IDX's. Pretty much it's kind of like Visual Studio Code. In Visual Studio Code, you also bring up the terminal, and then so now after you do that, so also you can bring the like Shava mentioned, like you could do terminal, and then you can bring a new terminal from here. I'm a power user, I do the command, but yes, you could come over here, you could go to terminal, and you can click new terminal, and then you can have like many instances of the terminal. Thank you, Shava, for that. So you could do that again. Let me do it again. You could do control tilde, or you could do hamburger menu, terminal, new terminal. And then now you're going to add the dependency. I can drop it in the chat right here. You have to do Flutter pub add, and then you add Flutter RiverPod, and we're going to be adding Google Generative AI. So I'm going to do it again. See, if I do it again, it's not going to blow up. It's just going to say that the dependency is already there. I don't need the command line anymore, so I'm going to close it, and I'm going to continue moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so that I have a little more room. Let's go back again to step number 6. So we're gonna continue picking it up again on step number 6. We bring those dependencies, and the first thing that we're gonna do is add the root widget. So I'm gonna zoom back in again, and we're gonna be adding the root widget. The root widget here is, of course, we're going to be creating something called Gemini temp app. Let me zoom in. So the main method is the entry point of every Flutter application. So you need to have the main method. The run app is the first method that you call in the framework, so that it actually installs the root widget. Every widget now, because it's going to be governed by this state management package called RiverPod, you need to wrap it inside this other widget called provider scope. This is kind of like providing a container so that all your dependencies, all your providers, all your services that are going to be injected and you're going to be able to like find them and locate them throughout the application. You have to wrap your application inside a provider scope. And then this is going to be like our main widget. It's going to be called Gemini temp app. So you can start creating it like this, and then you create like the scaffolding later. But at least you need to install the main method, which is the entry point for the application. Now let's continue down the line. And remember, when you create a widget in Flutter, you either create it as a stateful widget or as a stateless widget. In my case, I'm going to be creating the root widget. I'm going to be creating it as a stateless widget. So I'm in step number 6. I'm going to go right down and I'm going to paste the class. So you see the class says Gemini temp app. Now we're satisfying this dependency. I'm going to be creating it as a stateless widget because it's just going to paint itself once on the screen and all set. Every widget in Flutter has to override the build method. That way, the framework calls it, and then it can render the widgets that you're building within your build method. This is how you build like widget trees. You create widgets that are parents of other widgets. Widgets contain other widgets, and so on. You override the build method so that the framework calls that method and installs your widgets in the widget tree. And then here now in this Gemini temp app widget, root widget, we're creating yet another widget called Gemini temp main wrapped inside the material app. Remember that I mentioned that we're using the material styling from Google. So this is the material app. This is kind of like a widget that wraps your whole widget, your whole application rather, and it provides all the material styling for it. All the the design guidelines that follow the material design are incorporated into this widget. And now we're going to be creating our home widget, which is going to be called Gemini temp main. You see it as a squigglies because we haven't created it yet, but at least we've installed the main root widget, which is a Gemini temp app. So let's proceed right down and we're going to create that widget. So let's copy right down. Either if you want to, you can create all these classes as separate classes. Just for the sake of this workshop, let's just keep it all in the main file. But I encourage everybody to create like your little structure. You architect it well. You separate your widgets into separate classes, separate folders. You can create like a feature first type of architecture and whatnot. But in this case, let's keep it all in the main.dart. That way we keep things simple. Okay. So now we're going to be creating this widget called Gemini temp main, which is kind of like going to encapsulate sorry, I copied the wrong one. So let me copy it again. So we're going to encapsulate the main application. This is going to hold pretty much like the whole structure. It's going to contain like here in our, remember in this schematics is going to contain like the background, is going to be containing the whole structure. It has like a stack widget. You see like it has all those widgets. Okay. So let's continue. So now we have our main widget. The main widget contains a scaffold. Scaffold is another type of widget. This widget kind of represents like a full page. And then as the body, I'm going to create a stack. The stack then is just going to overlay the widgets on top of each other, kind of like in a pancake fashion, looking up. And then it has children. So we're going to be adding all the children, all those other widgets inside of the stack. That way they can be overlaid on top of each other. Okay. So now we have the Gemini temp main widget with a scaffold and a stack. Now let's continue. So after I have that, now we're going to be creating, for example, all the children on the stack. We're going to be focused on this area for the next couple of steps. Angelina, did we already add Gemini in the terminal? It's already added because of the Google generative AI. So let me repeat just that step real quick for you. When you go to the terminal, you go to you go to hamburger menu, terminal, new terminal. You just click on new terminal. And when we did Flutter pub add Google generative AI, just the Google generative AI is the Google AI SDK for Dart. This is what's going to give us access to the Gemini API, the Gemini SDK through their API. And all we need to do is just call some classes and some constructs so that we can talk to Gemini. But yes, with the command line, by adding this command, you already said by installing the dependencies. Later, we're going to be adding some of the other parts. No problem at all. Please ask your questions. And I know, yes, the VM may be a little bit slow, a bunch of people joining and all of that. No problem. So I'll close the terminal so we have a little more room. So now we're going to focus on this area. So we're going to be building the rest of the structure. And for that, we're going to go to the next step, which is step 7. So I'm going to go to step 7. And here we go. So the first thing that we're going to do is adding the background. So we want to start with foundational stuff. So let's actually add a widget that just represents the background. And the background is kind of like a gradient. If you see right here, you can just add it right there in the build method, but it's great that you create those widgets as separate elements, right? So let's exactly do that. So inside of my stack, I'm going to add just the placeholder first. I'm going to be adding a widget that I'm going to call it later on. I'm going to call it Gemini temp background, right? So I'm going to call it Gemini temp background. It doesn't exist, but it will represent the background of this application, okay? So this widget is just going to be kind of like a gradient color. We can add other features to it, but for now, it's just going to be a widget that encapsulates the color of the background. So in step number 7, I show you how to create a very simple stateless widget that represents the background. So I'm going to paste it right under the main. You see the Gemini temp main. I add the placeholder name for that widget. Then I add the class. So remember, every widget, everything in Flutter is a widget. Every single element is a widget, and either it can be stateful or stateless. In this case, it's going to be stateless. We're going to continue with this pattern. And you need to override the build method. The build method, all this is going to have is just a simple container widget with a decoration. The decoration, think of a container kind of like if you come from the web, it's kind of like a div. And then you can add like CSS to it. You can create a container to create, containers, around things. It's kind of like encapsulates other things. And it also can obtain, it takes the size of the children that it contains, and you can add a styling, for example, like the background borders and stuff like that. So this is just going to add a linear gradient to the background of this container, and the container is just going to be covering the whole surface of this whole page. Okay, so this is just called Gemini temp background. And now for you to start seeing the changes, make sure that once your code is in place, and let's say you're up to this point, all you need to do is either like refresh the browser right here, or you can just hit like the little like play button right here, like hard restart. You could do that. And then all it comes about is like you can either just continue refreshing. You could do, for example, like you could do hot reload kind of here, and full reload and hard restart. Those are the aspects of things that you can do in Project IDX, kind of like the way that you do it in Visual Studio. Hot reload, remember, it just edits in your changes in place. Full reload is just gonna reload the whole page, and hard restart is pretty much like blowing the whole thing up. But if you see now, we can see the background now materializing, and then you should be able to confirm that your page should be looking like this after you create the background. So let's just create the background. That is just the background. So the background is just one widget that represents the gradient of the application. That's it. Perfect. Awesome. So I think we should be moving at a decent pace. We have the background in place. We already added our dependencies. We created, you see, we already installed that temp background as a children of the stack. And now we're going to be overlaying other widgets to it. So let's go to the next step, which is step number 8. And in step number 8, we're going to be showing you how to add icons. Icons are very special to any application. They provide, iconography. They provide ways of meaning, ways to transmit, convey messages, not just with text, but with images. And the great thing about Flutter is that it already comes kind of like preloaded with some icons that you can use, the material icons. And the great thing is that you can just use them very easily. So let's actually do that by adding under the Gemini temp background widget. We're going to be adding this center widget. This center widget is just going to be kind of like laying out our widgets in the center of the screen, but on top of the background. So let's start. Let's continue here on step number 8, and we're going to be adding a center widget. So the same way that there are widgets that represent a container, there are widgets that also represent positioning. In this case, center, align, positioned, and stuff like that. So I'm going to do right under the background widget. I am going to paste that center widget. I'm going to fix the alignment, if you see here. And the center widget, all this is doing is just is going to be centering a column. So the center widget just center things in the middle of the screen. Column is a widget that just lays things out vertically. And then you can provide some additional properties. For example, like I just want the column to occupy the height of the children instead of the whole screen. You want it to be centered vertically, and you want it to be centered horizontally when you lay out the items inside of the column. Very simple. And then inside of the children, just like those type of flex type of widgets, you can add, there are widgets that can hold more than one widget in the case of the column. So let's now add all the other widgets. I'm just going to collapse the file so we have a little more room in here. And now we're going to be adding all the other widgets here inside of the children. So the first thing that we're going to be at is the icon. So the icon will be the first widget as part of the children in the column. So I'm going to remove this comment and add my icon. I am in step number 8. I am like halfway through, and I'm going to add the icon widget. An icon widget that just lays things out in the, it just creates a little icon in the center of the screen with 100 pixel dimension, with a color of white, with an 75% opaque. So that kind of gives you that translucent look. So I hope that you guys are okay. How do I open the web emulator? Angelina, the way that you could do it, you could just refresh the screen. For example, like if you close it by mistake, you don't have like any of the emulators, you could even refresh the whole IDE, like the whole, and then it like comes back automatically for you, and it should like pop up in the case that you do that. They already pop up automatically. That's the easiest way to do it. If you, let's say, you by mistake, you kind of closed it, you could just reload it, and then the emulators just come right back up. So if you see now, the web emulator shows you the background, shows you the icon, and now you see how, for example, like things are laying out, a little bit better. So now you can see that we're making a little bit of progress. So we should be good. Adding icons is super straightforward. Hey Dyer, how you doing, buddy? I hope you're having fun, and I hope that I know that you have a session later, so make sure to make it worth your while. Thank you so much for joining. Let's continue now on step number 9. So after step number 8, now we're gonna go step number 9. If you see on the screen, we're gonna go to step number 9. Now we're going to get a little bit more technical. We're going to go now into creating the meat and the logic of this application. We're going to be creating some enumerations. We're going to be creating some models, some plain old Dart classes, some view models, and whatnot. This is like now when you get into the meat of Flutter. Flutter is an amazing framework, but you still need to make it come to life. The way that you do it is very reactive. So in this case, we're going to be creating these entities that actually make your application come to life and light up. So one of the first things that we're going to be doing is some of the entities that will feed the data to it. One of the things, we're going to be creating some enumerations. These are enumerations in Dart are enhanced enumerations, because it's not just an enum that represents just a sequence of values. You can actually make enumerations that contain constructors and values and whatnot. So let's create an enumeration that is going to represent the two options or the two types of temperatures that we're going to be supporting. In our case, of course, Celsius and Fahrenheit. So I'm going to be creating, I'm on step number 9, by the way. I'm going to be copying this enum. I'm going to just drop it at the end of the file, like so. And if you see here, this enumeration just has two values: Fahrenheit to Celsius, Celsius to Fahrenheit. And then you can use this enhanced enumeration capabilities. You can add properties attached to an enum value, and you can add constructors as well. This is actually available in the latest version of Dart. So this is pretty good, and it's something that you should take advantage of. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating a model, the model that will represent the request that I'm going to be building, that I'm going to be sending to Gemini. Instead of just sending it the request right away, I want to assemble it in such a way that is more streamlined, as opposed to like, let's just send stuff. Let's just send a prompt with a bunch of stuff to it. No, we want to assemble the request the way that we want to send it, so that it's more programmatic, it's actually more in line with this application, and you can make it more robust and more, more streamlined, like I mentioned. So we're going to be creating a regular class that will encapsulate the things that I want to ask Gemini. So I'm in step number 9. I'm going to be creating a class, and I'm going to call it Gemini temp request. This request is going to have, of course, is going to leverage the temp options. So it's going to have a final property called conversion, either Celsius or Fahrenheit, or Celsius to Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit to Celsius. It's going to have a double value of the temperature. I'm going to have the string representation from value and to value, meaning what is the value that I want to, what is it that I want to convert and what I want to get back. So what you get is, you want to represent it as a string because you want to assemble it and then send it over, because this is going to be assembled as a prompt pretty much. Now we're, and then all I do is just, I create like a simple utility method that returns a JSON representation of this object. But great, thanks to Dart, the new feature in Dart called macros, or like static meta programming. I don't have to do this anymore. So this is great. So for those of you who want to adopt the latest version of Dart, and actually in upcoming versions, we're gonna have like some of the macro capabilities. So I kind of like that. Formatting code in IDX. Yeah, it's very simple. You can just, I believe you could do, like, if you select everything and do Control F, like I think it does formatting. Like I can here, for example, like, see, you can do format document, and then it just like formats it for you. So I think it still does it. It's pretty decent. I think is like very familiar if you know Visual Studio Code. And then there it is. Like now Gemini temp request. So now it is the class that represents the request that I'm gonna make. The same way that I'm going to send a request to Gemini, I expect a response back. So instead of me just expecting open text or a bunch of weird content from Gemini, I want it to be a specific type of response. That way my application knows what to expect, how to consume it, how to parse it, and then how to display it in the application. So I'm going to be creating a class called Gemini temp response. So this application is very simple. This class is very simple. It's just going to be receiving the conversion that happened, whether it was Celsius to Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit to Celsius. It's just going to recall back to me the value that I sent it. Oh, did I send you 36 Celsius so that you can send me, 90 something Fahrenheit? So please, this is the value. Please give it to me again. Just, I need to make sure that what I sent you is correct. And now give me the value that you converted as output value. So if you see here, I just created a factory method, kind of like a utility method, kind of like a factory constructor that allows me to create a new instance of the Gemini temp response with the information that I receive as a JSON from Gemini, so I can map it to a model that I can use much easily inside of my application. And this is just a simple static method that I created just to create like an empty version of the Gemini temp response, just in case something happens. I just don't want it to blow up. I'll just have like a default type of response from it. So you see, it's just a very straight up class in Dart that just has those values that I'm expecting back. Okay, awesome. And now we're going to go into the details of now the state management. So we're using, as a state management, we're using Riverpod. Riverpod is from the same creator as Provider. His name is Remy, amazing guy. Actually, this state management is very simple. The premise of state management is you have data that you want to consume in your application. Pretty much that's it. It's just the data that hydrates your UI, and then it just populates your UI with the data that it needs so that it can render itself. So pretty much state management, what it does is just maintains your data so that then other widgets can share it, can communicate through it, can pass it back and forth, and it just maintains that data for you so that then you can render your widgets and you create like a clean separation of concerns, as opposed to have everything like in the build method. You want to do a proper state management. Your data, or what they call, you lift up the state. That way your widgets can share the data that they need to render themselves, to hydrate themselves. It's pretty much the premise of what state management represents. Provider is a good option. Riverpod is the one that I recommend. For those of you, the Riverpod purists, I'm actually using basic core Riverpod. I definitely encourage using the build runner with Riverpod, because again, in line with Dart's macros and static meta programming, you're going to be much closer to that premise. Like really great Riverpod implementation using build runner. You can definitely do so. Right now I'm just using plain vanilla Riverpod, so please don't hang me because of that. But right now we're going to just now create some of the providers. All they do is they encapsulate the data so that it could be discoverable and injected and passed around, so that your widgets can consume the data and display it accordingly as they render. Kyle is asking, is Riverpod the de facto state management tool for Flutter? No, but they support it. Provider, you have like inherited widgets that actually comes in the framework, but it's not the de facto one. It's the one that I recommend, the one that I use. But there are some other ones like Block. There's Riverblock, there's Riverpod, Provider, GetX, MobX. There's a bunch of others right there, but I recommend this one. Can AI do the format of the code? Yes, it could. I think it could do it, but it also can do like code completion and all of that. Right now, we're actually following the codelab, but please, with project.ex, please go to town and do anything you want. So let's continue. So I'm going to continue now creating some providers. Providers now are used so that then widgets can locate them, find those services, find those providers, consume the data, and render accordingly. So now let's add some of the providers that are going to be consumed by our application, again, because we're using Riverpod. So you see here, we have a provider that will kind of provide a controller for managing the input field, where we're going to be putting like the temperature. We're also going to be managing a state provider, which is a type of reactive provider. Whenever this value changes, your widget rebuilds when it's a state provider, and that is going to be managing just the value of the temperature. Whenever we feed it, we give it to the state provider, and whichever other widget is listening to this is going to rebuild. We're also going to be, this is the input value provider. It's just like representing the input, like the actual value being input. This is just a flag that I'm using to represent whether the Gemini is actually performing and executing the command, is actually performing the call and then returning back to us. This is just a flag to say Gemini is working, wait for it, and then I turn it back to false when it's done. And I also have a provider that just provides me the option selected, whether it was Celsius to Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit to Celsius. And last but not least, I have a provider. It's kind of like a listener. Do you have providers can listen to other providers? In this case, this provider will be watching when this provider changes. Let's say whenever we toggle between Celsius and Fahrenheit, this provider will trigger. And will also then do like the flipped conversion. Like whenever you're in Celsius, you're going to convert it to Fahrenheit. When you're in Fahrenheit, you're going to convert it to Celsius. So I just created this quick provider that just provides that flipping, toggling capability of some indicators that I created. So I'm going to show you some of that. Perfect. So let's continue. Now I'm at the bottom of step number 9, and I've already added some of my providers. So now let's go to step number 10. Step number 10. Now this is the meat of this tutorial. So now we're going to be calling Gemini with the prompt that we're going to be assembling, and we're going to be performing the call and expecting something back from Gemini. How do we do that? Before I even go to step number 10 to let you guys to catch up, let's do it in AI Studio. So this is the way that people usually like practice their prompts and how I actually start building like my applications. I actually use a lot of Google AI Studio. I do my prompting in here. I refine the prompt, and then I use it to bring it into my application. For example, when I wanted to build this application, what I wanted to do was this. I wanted to type something like this. I wanted to say convert. Let me zoom in so that you guys can see it. I wanted to say convert the temperature value of, let's say the temperature value from Celsius to Fahrenheit, right? The Celsius temperature is 36. So this is the 36. So this is the way that you prototype using AI Studio, and you talk to Gemini just using this interface without doing any coding. Now, if I hit run, you will see how now Gemini replies to me saying, sure, yeah, okay, so this is how to convert 36 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. It just gives me a bunch of stuff, and at the end, it just says, okay, therefore, 36 in Celsius is 98 degrees. But I don't want this information. I want it in a way that Flutter can actually grab it, parse it, and they can use it. Am I going to have to grab all this text and then like see where is the actual response from Gemini and then grab the value and then consume it? No. The way then I have to tell Gemini, no, Gemini, please return the result as a JSON payload. Just like that. Let's see what he does. So just by telling Gemini, no. Yeah, whatever I just told you, please give it to me as a JSON. Okay, so he gave me Celsius 36, Fahrenheit 96.8 as a JSON. Still is not up to my standards or the way my application requires it. So instead, I'm going to tell it, no, I want you to return me. You could say, no, I want you to return as a JSON schema. I want to say return it as a JSON following the schema below. I want, for example, like let's say I want to tell it, for example, let me just paste this. See, I want to say a property named input value, output value, which is a converted value, and then you give me a property called conversion, and then you tell me that the conversion is from Celsius to Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit to Celsius. Now let's see what it replies. This is what I want. So this is exactly what I want. That way now Gemini just doesn't reply in plain text, in plain English, but it returns in a way that I can actually consume in any application. So you're using Gemini pretty much as your backend for certain situations, of course, where you don't need real-time data. For that case, that's another session where we talk about retrieval augmented generation, RAG, and all of that, how to improve your prompts and how to make them more contextual. But in this case, now I can use this information and tell Gemini, return to me as a JSON, this information, this is what I want you to do. Please go with that. Please give it to me because my application needs it, not just like a person who's going to read it. So now what I'm going to do is, instead of going through all of this prompting, I'm going to tell Gemini, please give it to me like this. Now let's go to step number 10 and let's copy this specific service that I created just to perform this operation. So in Flutter, you can just create a service. You can create a class that then encapsulates this functionality. In my case, I'm going to be creating this class called Gemini Temp Service. Let me, do some word wrapping in here. Perfect. So this is just a service, a regular class that is going to be performing this operation on behalf of the UI, right? So the first thing that I'm going to give it is a prompt. So the prompt, I have a method called getTemperature. The getTemperature receives a request. Remember, we created this class called Gemini Temp Request, which encapsulates all the pieces that the application collects to then give it to Gemini. And then it's going to reply with a temp response. So the first thing that we're going to do is a prompt. So the prompt says, generate a JSON payload that returns the conversion of weather from Fahrenheit to Celsius and vice versa. Now I'm using the values that I provided to this method in my temp request object, and I am interpolating it inside of the prompt. That way you create dynamic prompts that are not hard-coded, and you provide this information along with the prompt. That way you give it more information based on whatever your users are providing as input. So here now is going to say, please give it to me. This is the value that I want you to convert it to whatever, if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. And please give me the output of the conversion to Celsius or whatever the value is that I give it. If I give it Celsius to Fahrenheit, it's going to say, convert this value to Celsius and give me this output as Fahrenheit. Now this is now the meat of the implementation of Gemini. This is where you talk to Gemini. So what you do is you create a context and you create a content, and then a content object is going to have parts. You have text parts, you have image parts, you have file parts, you have data blob parts. There's a bunch of, when we get into multimodality in the next session, you're going to be learning more about this. But Gemini, you have to give it the prompt, not only with the textual part, but you actually want to give it other components. In this case, it's just text that we're giving. So in this case, it's just a text part, pretty much. Then you have to, thanks to the Google Generative AI, Google AI SDK for Dart, we have this object called a generative model, which is an object that you have to assemble before you send it to Gemini. You have to specify which model you want to tackle. You want to tap into. Let's say you have Gemini 1.5 Pro, you have Gemini 1.5 Flash, you have Gemini 1.5 Pro. There are other types of models. This is the model that supports multimodality. This is also the model that supports this part right here, which I'm going to go in just a minute. Here, this is the part that, of course, you're going to replace it with your own API key. So let's all go back and grab our API key wherever you have it. So I'm going to go grab my API key. I'm not going to save my changes, but I'm just going to grab my API key, come back to project ID X, and I'm going to replace it with my own API key. There it is. So perfect. So now I have my API key. Now this is an improvement that they just made like a couple of weeks ago, where you actually tell Gemini, please give it to me in this particular response and following this specific schema. This is a game changer, because this is going to allow you to force Gemini to give you the information that you require in the format that your application requires. Because, for example, in this case, you're going to tell it, please return it as a JSON. Instead of me telling it, I could say return as a JSON payload, but I can remove this part and depend on this, but I kind of like do like a double, attack. Do it in the prompt, but also provide it as a response MIME type. I'm saying, please give it to me as a JSON, but also I'm going to specify the schema. The schema is actually what each property type represents, what each property type should be. In the case of conversion, I want it to be one of many types of the enumerations that you have. For example, in this case, you have enum string. Enum string is actually, you have to give it all the values possible in your application. That way Gemini returns with one of those values. Input value, I want it to be a double. So you have to say schema.number, and then you say double. That way Gemini returns, it doesn't return with a string, it doesn't return with an integer, it will return with a double. So you're forcing Gemini to return you that specific schema. And of course, output value will also be a double, and then that's it. Now, after you assemble this object, after you assemble this, you're going to then now call Gemini. The way to call Gemini is actually using this entity right here. So after you instantiate the generative model, you're actually going to be calling this method called generate content. This is the key right here. Generate content. You give it the content that you assembled, whether it was a bunch of parts, a bunch of text parts, image parts, file parts, whatever parts. And then now you're going to do it asynchronously, of course, because you're not going to just do it synchronously. You don't know how long it may take for Gemini to reply to you. So you're going to call it generate content, and you're going to do it asynchronously. That's why you're doing an await here. So I'm using async and await, as you see here at the top of the method. I'm decorating the method with async because I'm going to do it asynchronously, and then I'm going to wait for the response. Remember that I told Gemini, please reply to me as a JSON, because I am confident that Gemini is going to reply with a JSON. I am going to decode it as a JSON map right here, just using JSON.decode. And then after that, remember we created this Gemini temp response class that maps any JSON into a valid Gemini temp response object, just the way that I expected. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. After I receive the Gemini response, I'm going to map it to my own model, and I'm just going to return out of this method with a completely assembled object that I can consume in my application. Simple as that. So that's what I love about, again, using generation config, using the generative model object, and then you tell it what type of reply you want to receive from your application. Okay. Before we move on, I have something for you guys. For those of you who are either following along or you guys are actually, let me bring my slides one more time, because I have kind of like a little break, because I don't want to saturate you too much with with a bunch of content. So why don't we do a little activity that I like to call it, and I'm going to show you right in just a minute. I have a pop quiz for all of you. Before we proceed with the rest of the workshop, I want to give you a pop quiz. I want to see how you guys are paying attention to whatever we just did. So before we proceed with the rest of the workshop, I'm going to give you a pop quiz. Please join at slido.com, or you do slide.do, or you can follow the URL, or you can scan the QR code. But join us at slido.com with the code 2483777. Let's do a quick pop quiz. Let's see how you guys are paying attention. Let's see how well you're doing. This may also depend on whether you get some swag or not. So please join the pop quiz. I'm going to give you just a minute. Let me launch the quiz. That way, you guys can see it right now, and then we all join in that. And then now we're going to do like some interactive session. So put your pencils down. Let's start. Let's create this. Let's do this, this little, activity. So please join at slido.com with the code 2483777. And now, wait, hold on. Let me start the quiz one more time. Let me stop it. Perfect. And we're going to start the code. Okay, so let's start it one more time. Yep, sorry about that. Let me start here we go. So this is just, again, something, kind of like more of a, oh, sorry, I got the wrong one. Let me give you the correct one. Let me start it right here. Yeah. Here we go. So please let me know if you guys can see this, if you're able to join the quiz. So let me go back again. Perfect. I just wanted to see if people were joining the session. So please join the, awesome. Perfect. So a lot of people are already like answering the questions and whatnot and trying to do stuff in there, but please try to join us at slido.com with the code 2483. That way we can do this activity. So let's see how many people are already joined. Let's start it one more time. Here we go. Perfect. So I just want to see how everybody is doing. So first question in the quiz. Oh, why is it? It's just like, okay. So what is Gemini for Google? Is it the third zodiac sign? Is it, I don't know, it keeps popping up for me. Is it a family of large language models or a new programming language? So what is Gemini for Google? So that is correct. Gemini for Google is a family of large language models that you are able then to tap into the capabilities of the AI provided by Google. Awesome. Let's go to the next one. For some reason, my code is I think I'm gonna have to reset it because people are using the wrong link. So I'm gonna stop it one more time, and then I'm gonna reset the link because for some reason it got messed up. Sorry about that. I wanted to create something like, I wanted to actually create something, really cool for all of us. I just wanted to, make sure to have something more, engaging than just the regular, okay. So let's do it again. Okay. So that was our question. That was the one that we answered. Okay, perfect. So now, can anybody remember how many platforms does Flutter officially support at the moment? Is it 5, 6, or 7? Can you try to answer? Or for those of you who want to join, I started it again all over. Just wanted to make sure that people were answering the question. How many platforms does Flutter officially support at the moment? Is it 5? Is it 6? Or is it 7? Try to remember that. A lot of people are saying 5, 6, 7. The right answer is 7. 7 is the official amount of platforms that Flutter supports. There are 2 more available, RISC-V and WebAssembly, but 7 is the official amount of actually platforms that it supports. And then last question, just again, is just this more of an activity that we want to do. Last one, how can you access Gemini from your Flutter applications? Is it via the Google AI SDK for Dart? Is it via the Google Cloud Functions endpoints or through gRPC calls? Which is the way that you can access Gemini from your Flutter applications? Is it first one via the Google AI SDK for Dart, via Google Cloud Functions, or through gRPC calls? Let's see. People are saying via the Google AI SDK or via the Google Cloud Functions endpoints. The correct is via the Google AI SDK for Dart. Google Cloud Functions, you can, other applications do it, but only Flutter applications can do the Google AI SDK for Dart. So thank you so much again for joining this this session. And Carlo was the top, the top answerer, or actually the fastest answerer in this case. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining this quick little activity. Let's go back right now, back to our code. That way we can finalize this workshop. Thank you so much again. We just wanted to make it more, dynamic and all of that. So let's continue. Let me reload the application. I think we are at a good point where we should start seeing, we won't be able to see anything because now we want to tap into whatever we just built. So now I'm going back to step number 11. Now in step 11 is where I'm actually building the pieces that are actually going to bring the UI to life, right? So you want to build, we're using the MVVM pattern. In this case, remember, you want to create clear separation of concerns between your UI and the data layer. So we're creating view models because what they do is they retrieve the data on behalf of the UI and then just hydrate the UI, receive the events from the UI and then pass it over, perform some actions and then pass it along, and then kind of like provide a true clean separation of concerns. So we're all in step 11. Let's create our first view model. We're gonna call it Gemini temp local retrieval view model. So I'm gonna copy that class and then I'm just gonna paste it right under here because we're still in the main method, right? In the main class, right? So this is it. It's just this one extends state notifier. A state notifier is are those classes that you create so that you want to actually trigger changes in your UI whenever the state changes. This one manages one type of state. The state is Boolean. Remember, it's a flag that is just going to say, I am retrieving something or I'm not retrieving something from Gemini. So it's just going to be turning on a flag so to tell the UI, I'm done fetching data, now do something. So let's continue. What we're going to be doing in this view model is creating a method that will call the service that we created earlier. Actually, we're missing one step from our service class. Sorry about that. We need to add one additional provider. Apologies. In step number 10, the last step, we need to bring this new provider. So we need to add a provider. Remember, if you don't add a provider, then your services on your objects won't be located, won't be injected. Other widgets won't be able to locate them and bring them in. So make sure that the Gemini temperature service, the one that we created right here, has corresponding provider, okay? So make sure that you do that. Let's go back down. And now we're going to continue to step 11, where I'm going to be grabbing that method that will perform the call for us. So from inside of this view model, I'm going to create this method called convert temp. All this method will do is just collect the values from the user, is going to assemble a request, is going to receive the response, grab that response and pass it over to the UI so the UI can populate itself. So very simple. We're going to be reading the value that people put in the input field. We're going to grab what type of conversion they're doing. I am going to be assembling a Gemini temp request object with all the information required for Gemini. Remember, it's going to need the type of conversion. It's going to need the value of the temperature. It's going to need from what to what. Is it from Celsius, for Fahrenheit, whatever. So it's going to be providing that value in there. Then it's going to be calling that method that we remember was going to be creating this is going to be calling the get temperature method in our Gemini temp service that we created. We're going to pass the request. We're going to get a response, just as you see here. So we're going to capture that response. And then with that response object, we're going to feed it into another provider so that if the UI is listening to that provider, it's going to react to it. Oh, I have some value to display. Let me display it. So we grab a reference of this provider by using the ref instance. Remember, ref is kind of like a container for RiverPod. That way you can locate, you can read, you can watch providers. And then we're going to update its state using the value that we receive. Okay. And then this is just handling the exception. And then at the end, all I'm saying is changing the state of this view model to false, saying I'm done fetching data. You see how we set it to true initially, then we set it to false at the end. That's just saying I'm going to do something, I'm doing it, then I'm done. It's just notifying the UI so that it can react accordingly. I'm going to add one more method, just kind of like to do like resetting of values within this view model. So this method, all this method does is reads all the providers and resets them kind of like to their defaults. Like we're going to clear the input field. We're going to be clearing the value in there and just resetting the degrees to 0, like the temperature value to 0. That's pretty much all this is doing. What about temp service? Yes, James, thank you so much for the reminder. Yes, we just did that. Just a miss on my part. Sorry. We just added it right up here as part of the providers. Thank you so much for calling that out. Let's continue now. We're going to be also adding the ability to capture the desired conversion. Like now from here, we're going to be saying, when I click on the selection, let's say I want to convert it to Celsius, or I want to convert it to Fahrenheit. We're going to be adding a method that will be capturing this information. And all this is going to be doing is first, it resets all the values. Then it grabs the temperature option. Remember, it's either one of the two. It's Celsius to Fahrenheit or Fahrenheit to Celsius. We feed it into this method. We assign it to the corresponding provider. It's going to react accordingly, and it's going to change the UI based on this value. And then from there, we perform the conversion. Now, of course, as every entity that you create under the RiverPod state management, you need to create a provider so that you can locate this view model. In this case, we're going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be creating it's going to be called Gemini Retrieval Local VM Provider. It's just a provider, type of state notifier provider, remember, because it is a type of state notifier. And I'm going to be able to locate it anywhere in my application. So you can just put all your providers kind of like in the same location. You can just grab this provider, put it right under here. And now I'm going to be able to locate it anywhere in my application. With all of this done, we've settled the plumbing, we've settled the services, we've settled the view models, all the enumerations, all the models, requests, responses, all of that. Now we want to display some temperature. Let's now build the interface that will capture this information for us. Marshall, you said you got lost on left behind inside of view model class. Okay, so when you're here inside of the view model class, the way that you do it, for example, like all of these methods, you're going to add them inside of this class. I can do it real quick for you just in case you missed that. So look. So you're going to start from scratch. You're going to start with a class called Gemini Temp Local Retrieval View Model. And then everything else is going to go inside of the view model class, starting from the convert temp method. So you're going to grab that method. You're going to put it right inside of the view model. It's part of the actions of the view model. Then you're going to be adding the second method called reset values right under that method, which is a way for you to programmatically reset some of those providers through the view model. And we said that we wanted to add one method to capture the conversion, and you just add it right under it. Everything inside of that view model class that is in step 11. You see, everything now is inside of the view model class. And now you should be good to go. Now let's move on to step number 12, where we're going now to display the temperature Finally, some people say, finally, now we're going to see some stuff. Let's go all the way back up. All the way back up. We're going to go all the way up, and we're going to go back again where we kind of started. Remember here where we have like our icon and all of that. This is where we're going to be adding. It's going to be a children of that center widget that we created initially. If you see it right here, this is exactly where you're going to be continue. Right here. Look, you're going to continue right here. So after, right below the icon, we're going to be creating the first widget that is going to be displaying the temperature. So the way that we do it, or the way that kind of like I go about it, I create first I create like the placeholder widget, what I want to call it. I want to call it Gemini temp display, and I want it to go right here under the icon. Then what I do is I start fleshing it out. So I first put the placeholder name of the icon, then I go and flesh it out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that class that represents the Gemini temp display. You just copy the whole thing. Don't worry about it. We can dissect it now in just a minute. The Gemini temp display widget, all this is doing is creating a row with another icon, like a thermostat icon. I'm going to show you right here. So this is what we're building right here. So we're building just that row. That display is just the row. It has the thermostat icon. It has the value of the temperature, and it has that little widget that shows you the type of the temperature that we're converting it to, whatever we're displaying. So it's pretty much that. So see, here's the icon. This is just some spacing. Consumer is a widget that will react whenever the provider that is listening to it changes. So in this case, we're going to be listening, remember, to that Gemini retrieval local VM provider. Anything in that provider, in that VM changes, remember the state, when it changes, this widget rebuilds and it's going to display the information. So it's going to read the value, any value that is available. So I'm going to be reading that provider that contains the value. I'll check whether we're retrieving any data. Otherwise, I'm just going to show a spinner widget. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to show a spinner if I'm fetching data. If not, I'm just going to display the value of the temperature as it is. If it's a 0, I'm going to show a 0. If nothing, I'm just going to show the spinner. And then I'm going to add some spacers, and I'm going to add yet another widget that will be reading the current temperature value that we're converting it. So if we're doing Celsius, so it's going to be grabbing the value of the Celsius and it's going to be displaying it in just a nice container with some nice decoration and whatnot. So I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna reload it. I'm gonna hit the hard restart just in case. And now we're going to be starting seeing some of those values in there, okay? So now that I have that, Marcia say, specify the required indentation level for inserting inside the class. Yes, unfortunately, my markdown, is a little weird. It doesn't preserve the indentation. So bear with me as you bring the code into Project IDX, and then you can format it as you go along, okay? Perfect. So now that we see, remember, there's no values being converted. The default value is actually 0, according to this. Remember, to this provider, the default value is 0. So that is just the bare minimum that we're showing. The default value in this is Fahrenheit. If you can see it, the default conversion option is Fahrenheit. That is exactly what we're displaying, and we're just showing that thermostat, the little icon. Okay, so now that we have that, let's proceed and add now the other pieces. So now I'm going to, for example, I add like a little bit of spacing usually, and at the end of step number 12. I encourage you to add like a little bit of spacing. So you could go right there where we placed our display, our Gemini temp display, which is right here. And I encourage you to do like a sized box. You could use like the gap a package, but just add a little bit of spacing, because this is all that this would do is add a little bit of buffer between the label, the temperature, and whatever we're going to put right underneath it. Okay, so you can just add some spacing. That way you have some breathing room in there. So perfect. That's not going to show at the moment, but at least let's confirm that step number 12 gets you this far. So now that you have, so Marshall, so you need to make sure that, again, all duly noted, but you need to make sure that whenever, if I say inside of this class, please add it right there. And then the rest is actually a separate class. So I'm going to take that as a note, and I'm going to add it, make sure that all the other stuff is not added inside of that same class. It has to be added outside. Every class has to be separate and all of that. Okay. Yes. And I also have the full code at the end if you guys want to proceed with that. But again, that's not the point. The point is let's do it together. But at the end, you can definitely inspect it. Perfect. Let's continue now to step 13. We're almost there. Now we're going to be building that widget that represents the whole input. So that is, we're calling this Gemini temp input. The way that we do it is, again, you go right where we left off here in the column, right under the spacing that I encourage you to add. And then you're going to add this new widget called Gemini temp input. Gemini temp input now is going to represent that input, like a field, and then you're going to put the value and you're going to feed the information inside, like the user is just going to type it in. Let's grab that class. You can add it anywhere. I usually encourage you to add it, for example, either at the end or right underneath it, because you want to, you don't want to go too far. And the Gemini temp input is just going to represent just that field. Is going to capture the inputs and is going to change and trigger accordingly. Let me just walk through it real quick. This is just a container. Let me zoom out because I think, okay. So it's just a container with some decoration. I added kind of like an expanded widget so that it actually fills the whole space. I added some decoration to the input so that it looks more like this, like kind of transparent. You cannot add characters. You can only add numbers. You can only add a maximum of three characters, three numeric characters based on this, input formatter. I'm adding some styles, maximum of length 3. Make sure that they're centered. And I am adding this little widget right here that looks like a button. And I kind of like created my own little container. That's pretty much what it is. It's just a button, kind of like a little elongated, but that's pretty much it. Awesome. So now that I'm there, and then you see right now, this is not doing much. But if I try to then, for example, let's say 36, and I'm going to convert it, it's going to try and fetch some information. And there it is. Just by bringing that information, it allows me to already tap into Gemini, but it doesn't let me convert it from Celsius to Fahrenheit. I'm sorry, from Fahrenheit to Celsius, or toggle it. Right now, it's only doing Celsius to Fahrenheit, Celsius to Fahrenheit. If I do, for example, 23 Celsius, it's going to do 73 Fahrenheit, but it doesn't let me toggle it. What we're going to do is now we're going to add the part where you can toggle it. So we want to add, and here I added a comment in the code where it says, add the Gemini temp selector here once you create it. So follow this code exactly the way it is, and then you're going to be just fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now create that Gemini temp selector, which is that toggle, and we're going to bring it right here after we create it. So I'm going to leave that comment in there. And I'm going to go to create that temp selector. So it's going to be just one widget that will toggle between Celsius and Fahrenheit. I'm going to just copy it. I'm going to go right up here, wherever, where it's asking me, add it right here. So I'm going to add it there. And now I'm going to go and create that temp selector, because that temp selector is going to be displayed right here as part of the row that contains the, it's going to contain the selector, the input, and the button. So it's going to be in a row in a horizontal fashion. So now I'm going to just grab that temp selector widget. I'm going to go over what that widget represents again. I'm just going to add it right down here. Again, I encourage you create separate classes for your widgets. That is the recommended way. But for the interest of this workshop, we just wanted to do things quick. And you've seen after I just added, it refreshed. And then it gave me the capability to see these two buttons so I can toggle now. So all we're doing in this Gemini temp selector is listening to that provider. It's a provider called temp conversion option provider. When you click it, it's going to assign which is the conversion that we want to do, whether Celsius or Fahrenheit. And it's just going to render, it's going to just reload and repaint itself based on the new state. Remember, state management is you have your data changes state, your UI needs to know about it, you notify it via this reactive fashion, which is just notifying that the state changed, and then the UI just rebuilds itself. So now that this is in place, now let's try to do it. So here, for example, like you could do Fahrenheit, Celsius, Fahrenheit, Celsius. You see when I change to Fahrenheit, I see the Celsius right here. You can see this Celsius, and then it switches to Fahrenheit. Now I'm going to, for example, I'm going to do, Celsius, for example, again, like before, I'm going to do 23 Celsius to Fahrenheit. I click on the purple button, you see 73. Now let's flip it back. I'm going to click Fahrenheit. I'm going to do 73, and I'm going to convert it to Celsius. I'm going to click, and now you see 22.8, almost 23, right? So if you see there, now we were able to use Gemini as kind of like our backend. We didn't have to create any additional logic. We just let Gemini do the logic for us, reply to us in the format that we require so we can feed it into our application. That way you can build, robust applications powered by AI. So if you see here, we are in step 13, and now you should be able to have, at this point, you should be able to have a functional, type of UI. If you got a little bit stuck, no problem, Marshall, totally fine. You can go and inspect the full code. That way, then you can see how the widgets, you have all the time in the world to inspect the code now at your own pace. Again, thank you for the feedback. We'll definitely take that into consideration. But if you see here now, you should be able to have a full-blown implementation of this temperature converter using Flutter, tapping into Gemini. And then you should be able to have that same experience as I have right here. If you want, again, for those of you who want to grab the full code, you go all the way to step 15. You can just click here to step 15, and you can click right here on the public gist. There's a public gist that I created, which you can just grab the whole thing, copy, paste it, and then you should be good to go. But there's no fun in doing that. The best thing here is that, we ask each other questions. We build it step by step. You see how things are assembled and whatnot. So yeah, as a wrap up, I just wanted to say, again, this was the CodeLab. You can use it again in your own events. You can share it with your friends. You can go over this whole thing again if you want to. Go step by step, take a look at the code, see how widget composition is composed, how things get built, how you assemble things together. I would encourage you, of course, to see for example, like remember that we added our API key as part of the code. That is a big no-no. You need to make sure that either your code is obfuscated, that you actually, I actually added a link created of an article created by Andrea Bisotto. He's a great, Flutter GDE. He creates great articles out there, and he has a great article on how to actually better provide or hide your API keys whenever you're building Flutter applications. So please don't forget to follow me on social media and all of that. Let me wrap up now. But again, please use this CodeLab for all your purposes, whatever you want to do. Let's bring back the presentation so that I can show you now a couple of last things before we wrap it up. But as far as the CodeLab goes, again, please, you can provide any feedback, good or bad, totally acceptable. Just wanted to, we wanted to improve. We wanted to provide you with the best, activities and workshops as possible. This is the kind of thing that makes us grow. So appreciate everybody's feedback. Let me get back to the presentation again, the way that I had it. I hope you guys can see it. Let me know if you guys can see it. So we went over through all of that. Perfect. We're going to be doing some of that. We already did the pop quiz. Thank you so much for joining. For next session, which is going to be next Wednesday, we're going to be doing pretty much the same thing, but now we're going to go one step beyond. We're going to be actually sending images to Gemini. We're going to be tapping into something called multimodality. Multimodality is a feature that large language models have, that they can interpret more than just text. You could give it audio, video, images, other parts of other context, so that you can actually make your prompts much richer. You can make applications a lot more robust, more a lot more features powered by AI. So next session, we're going to be building kind of like a Pictionary type of Flutter web application, where you're going to be drawing with your mouse. You draw something, and let's see if Gemini can guess what you're drawing. Please draw nice things. But that's exactly what we're going to be doing next session. We're going to be building this another Flutter web application powered by Gemini. Of course, you can reuse the same API key that we just built, that we just got, but we're going to be tapping into multimodality. We're going to have another code lab and all of that. So please make sure to join the next session next Wednesday, same time, and we're going to have a lot of fun on all of that. So thank you so much, everybody, for that. And raffle time. Please make sure to add your name to this raffle. We're going to be wrapping it up in just a few minutes. We're going to be raffling like about 3 of these like Google bottles. Remember, if you're in the US or Canada, you're good to go. If you are outside of the US or Canada, sometimes the Google store cannot ship over there. If not, you're going to be compensated with a $25 Amazon gift card or something, but at least we're trying to give you something, try to be fair with everybody. But again, it's not me. I don't manage the Google store. They usually don't ship to other countries. Unfortunately, the Google merch store, I think it may do it, but let's see. But if you're in the US and Canada, you're good to go. So we're going to be raffling a couple of these nice, drinkware bottles from Google. I just want to appreciate all the communities that came together to make this event possible, brought your communities together. Shava, thank you so much for answering questions in the chat. Linda, thank you so much for supporting. Kevin, another Flutter GDE in the house. A lot of folks out there. Thank you so much for joining. And I want to give you this as a token of our appreciation, so that you can join other sessions, so that you kind of like reward you for spending a little bit of your time with us. So now I'm going to be doing the usual, of course, thank you, but please don't leave, because we're going to be doing the wheel of names. So I hope everybody added their names to the form. Remember, you need to be present. I'm going to call you out. As soon as I say somebody's here, you have to say, I'm here. And then you're going to have to say present, you're there, and then we need to see that you're there. If not, too bad. We're going to give it to somebody who's actually here. So let me pull up now the names that we collected. If you why don't I just give you again 1 more minute? If you want to put your name now, either sign up through tinyurl.com AI raffle. Sign up here, or you can just scan the QR code. Marshall, what is the one command to export to APK? You should be able to export it as an APK from there. I've had some issues a little bit, but I would invite you to explore again all the capabilities of Project IDX, so that you can do that. You should even tap into the iOS emulator, which is pretty cool. You can actually build it in the cloud as well. It's pretty cool. So make sure to add yourself to the list. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds before we proceed, and then we're going to wrap it up. So let's see who is going to be the lucky winner of 3 Google drinkware bottles. Is going to be shipped to your house. So make sure, let's just give you 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds so that you can add your name to the list, and then we're going to close it out. Okay. So I hope you added your name. Let's see who's the lucky winner. I'm going to copy.
Roman, if you can leave on the screen the winner for a few seconds to take the screenshot.
Yes, that way. I will definitely do that. That way we know who exactly. Perfect. So I'm going to copy everybody's names. I'm going to put it right here and paste everybody. Oh, we have a great turnout. Thank you so much, everybody. So now let's see who's the lucky winner of a drinkware from Google. Just as I'm showing you right there, it's pretty cool. I have a couple. I actually have this. This is a Flutter Stanley Cup that I got from the Google team. Thank you, Flutter team. No, this is not the one, but it's pretty cool, just like this one.
Can you make the screen a little bit bigger? So
I can make the screen a little bigger. If you see, for example, I'm gonna do this. Can you guys see it? I'm gonna move my. I'm just gonna move my my bar to another. Here we go. So can you guys see it?
yeah.
Okay, perfect. So now we're gonna raffle 3 drinkware bottles from Google. I'm gonna spin, and I'm gonna wish everybody luck. Good luck to everybody. I'm gonna spin. Let's see who's the first Google drinkware bottle. Who's the lucky winner? I'm gonna spin. Drum roll, please. Drum roll, please. And we have Catherine Davis. I'm going to leave it there. Catherine, are you online right now? Please answer. Or we need to see whether Catherine Davis is online. If I'm gonna, let's just give it a minute for Catherine to reply. Okay, so Catherine going once. Catherine, if you're oh, she's requesting presenter mode. No, just reply in the chat. I think Catherine is online. Okay, perfect. You are available. Please, we're gonna reach out to you via the email that you provided. Make sure that you provided the correct email, and we're gonna get your information. That way, we can ship to you a nice Google bottle. Okay, congratulations to you. Thank you so much for attending. Now we're gonna do a second one. So let's remove Catherine. Thank you so much. We're gonna do a second one. So we're gonna do another drinkware. Good luck to everybody. The second Google drinkware. Drum roll, please. Carlo Tedesco. Carlo Tedesco, are you online? Oh, here it is. Carlo, congratulations, buddy. You are the winner of a Google drinkware. I love these ones pretty much. They keep the water like cool for a long time, even like until the next day. But it's cool because it's branded. So thank you so much, Carlo Tedesco. Thank you so much. Congratulations. You are the winner of a Google drinkware. And now I'm going to remove Carlo, and we're going to have our last drinkware of the night. And we're going to wrap it up for tonight. So let's wrap it up. One more. And the winner is Samina. Samina, good. So you always join. Thank you, Samina. She's a long-time supporter of GDG Lawrence. She's amazing. Thank you so much. You are the winner of the third drinkware from Google. And now with this summer so hot, this comes so handy. It keeps the water cool and all of that. So Samina, congratulations. Thank you so much. And now to everybody else, thank you. Thank you so much for spending 2 hours with me just blabbing about Flutter, Gemini. Thank you, Shava, again one more time. Linda, you are a saint. Thank you so much for supporting. Kevin, the rest of the folks. Who else do I see here? I see a bunch of other folks. James, Amina, Paul. I hope you're feeling well. Thank you so much for joining wherever you are. Thank you so much, buddy. I see a bunch of folks from Dominican Republic. Diane, thank you so much for joining. Lulu, Karen, Larry, Shava, again, thank you so much. Please join next Wednesday where we're going to do a lot more things, a lot more stuff. We're going to have more prizes, more raffles, and more cool stuff around Flutter and Gemini. Thank you again. See you next Wednesday. Make sure to sign up. And thank you one more time. Again, brought to you by GDG Lawrence and a lot of the GDGs from US and Canada. Thank you so much. everybody for bringing your communities, bringing all your energy, your passion, and your love for Flutter. Thank you so much,
some
everybody.
questions in the Q&A. I don't know if you address all
I
of
can
them.
answer a few offline in case. Let me see. I think I already answered those. We say, can we comment about Flutter Dart courses on Cloud Skills Boost? Cloud Skills Boost has a lot of great courses. You should follow. I think there's even some badges that you can do. I can even, if you join GDG Lawrence Slack, I can even give you the link for the GDG Lawrence Slack. That way you can join it, and you can for example, I can provide you with a lot more resources on that. But there's a couple of nice badges, nice paths that include Flutter. There's nothing Flutter specific, but there's things that involve Flutter, Firebase, and whatnot. Please join GDG Lawrence through our Slack. I can probably send you some information on that. John Rio says, could you share the temp service provider code in the chat? The whole code is available in the chat, is also in the slides. At the end of the code lab, the whole code is there. Remember, you can copy paste it and you can continue doing that. Angelina closed the emulator. We already helped her out with that. Anybody has any questions before we close it out?
Kevin was saying, DM me that it doesn't let him to provide feedback. The feedback form is not working.
Interesting. But we will definitely maybe we can actually create something maybe for next week so that people can provide some feedback.
Or maybe a follow-up email to.
Great, awesome. So thank you very much, everybody. Join next session. Remember, GDG Lawrence in our community page. Make sure to join. I'm actually gonna why don't I just drop it right here, and that way you guys can also do it. For some of you who are still staying behind, you could go to GDG Lawrence and you can join our community. Make sure you can send us email. We can provide you with more resources. Shava just dropped a good code lab from Flutter itself, but I meant like in Cloud Skills Boost, there's a couple of paths in there. Also, my collabs, the ones that I have in Roman Just Codes workshops, you can actually leverage some of those, and then you could do, you can follow some of the workshops that I have in there for anybody who's interested. And I think it was Kevin who dropped some of those, but you can definitely, take a look at some of the other Flutter collabs that I have in there. But other than that, just wanted to say thank you so much. See you next Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Roman, again.